Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of the Roundabout Way of Fate. This will be part 29, the second half to chapter 19. As time passes, Izuku starts to wonder if he'll even get to use his quirk today. Sure, it's only the second day, but he's eager to take Nejiri's advice and put it into action. The medical wing gradually turns orange in the light of the sun as it dips closer to the horizon. There's been a bit of a lull for the past hour, but it's interrupted when a couple of sidekicks burst in, carrying an obviously injured civilian between them. Kame takes one look at the third-degree burn on the woman's leg and curses under her breath. You'd think that a hero as experienced as Endeavor would be better at aiming for the right target, she grumbles to Izuku. Actually, one of the sidekicks winces in apology as he helps set the woman down on a bed. This was Burnin's fault. It was an accident, of course, but Kame looks unimpressed. And why didn't she bring this poor woman in herself? She sniffs. The other sidekick snorts. Probably 'cause she knew you'd tear her head off. The injured civilian says, "Can I get some help here?" Her expression is tight with pain and her voice wavers. Honestly, considering how ugly the burn is, Izuku is surprised she is not crying. Right, of course. Kame immediately starts examining her wound, Izuku hovering over her shoulder. Much like how he does with the burns Kachan causes, Kame has to carefully remove the seared cloth of her pants from the injury. Once it's clear, she falls silent and just gazes at it for a moment. Then, she turns to Izuku and asks, "Hey kid, want to show off that quirk of yours?" "Huh?" he asks. "Are you sure?" Kame nods. "Yeah, even if I use mine, this is still going to take weeks to heal." The injured woman flinches. "Come on, I've been dying to see your quirk ever since Recovery Girl told me about you." Izuku hesitantly switches places with her and slowly reaches out to put his hands on the woman's leg. The burn runs horizontally along her thigh, and while it is severe, it's not extremely big. He can feel everyone's eyes on him, Kame, the civilian, the two sidekicks, but he forces himself to concentrate on himself as his quirk activates. Like Nejiri said, he tries to focus on where his energy leaves his body, rather than the energy itself. Obviously, the point he's drawn to is his fingertips. He isn't quite sure what to do now. He doesn't feel something tangible that he could have a grasp on. Still, he tries to do what his senpai suggested and close off that exit. He shuts his eyes and tries to imagine. Just take that channel the energy is flowing from and narrow it down. Didn't Nejiri say something about a hose? Try to step on the hose to stem that flow of water. Holy shit! That's amazing! Izuku startles out of his thoughts, his quirk shutting off. Everyone around him is staring at the completely healed skin under his palms. But Izuku notices something else. His fingertips are tingling. It's like he's suddenly aware of this part of his body that he had never really felt before. He didn't even succeed in slowing down his energy, but somehow that analogy Nejiri had said makes perfect sense. It's like the hose is in his fingers, but not literally. It's hard to describe, even to himself, but he felt it. It was like the point of the quirk's connection. It wasn't tangible, but it felt like it could be. Whatever it was, he needs to try it again. There isn't even a scar. Kame peers at the non-existent burn with wide eyes. The civilian looks shocked too. "It feels totally better. The pain just went away like that." She turns her stare to Izuku. "Who are you?" Izuku smiles politely and says, "My name's Midoriya Izuku. I'm an apprentice doing my internship week with Kame-san." "Damn, Kame-san, where'd you find this kid?" one of the sidekicks asks. Kame looks just a bit smug. "Recovery Girl is mentoring him at UA, but she let me take him for the week." She turns to Izuku. You were worried about her overselling you, but I don't think she sold you enough. That's seriously an amazing quirk. Is it like Osaki-san's? The sidekick asks, but Izuku shakes his head and explains how his quirk works. He's given an impressed look. You've got something really special there, kid. Izuku flushes and thanks them. They're able to send the civilian off soon, but only after she thanks Izuku profusely, much to the greenette's embarrassment. Then Kame claps him on the shoulder and steers him towards the door. Let's go get dinner, she says. You deserve it. You've done really well for your second day. I'm glad, Izuku says. You feeling tired? Kame asks, a tinge of concern in her eyes. I was going to give you a brief rundown of the night shift after dinner, but I know your quirk saps your energy, so... No, it's all right, Izuku insists. Even though he is pretty tired, not from his quirk, just from the long day in general, he wants to learn as much as he can while he's here. I only usually get tired after healing big injuries, or just a lot of smaller ones. I'm fine, really. Kame nods, and they take the elevator up to the dining commons. Dinner is calm. A couple of other medics join their table and chat with Kame, so Izuku is able to relax and text Kachan, whose second day wasn't much better than his first. Bastard fucking gave me a haircut. OMG, please, send pics. Fuck no. He also fucking put me in jeans. How the fuck am I supposed to fight villains in jeans? I repeat, OMG, please, send pics. Fuck you. Softly snickering to himself, Izuku pockets his phone and continues eating. The food here is amazing. Despite not liking Endeavor too much, he's gotta admit the guy's agency is pretty great. Maybe later he can check out the training facilities when Kame's not too busy. Once he finishes his dinner, he idly listens in on the medics' conversation until Kame announces that it's time to go. He bids his goodbyes and follows the healer as they make their way out of the dining commons. This shouldn't take too long, so don't worry, Kame reassures, stepping into the elevator. I'm just going to introduce you to the night shift staff and have them explain how their duties go. Not too different from what we do, but there are some differences to take note of. Okay, Izuku nods, noticing that the elevator is slowing down. It must be stopping to pick up someone on another floor. The door slides open to reveal Endeavor, in all his flaming glory, standing with Todoroki. As soon as their gazes land on Izuku, their faces morph into expressions of surprise. Midoriya? Todoroki's eyes widen. Izuku smiles. Todoroki-kun. Kame-san. Endeavor growls, turning his glare to the healer. Endeavor. Kame finishes, smirking. You coming in or what? What is he doing here? Endeavor demands. He's here for the internship, Kame replies simply. The Flame Hero's eyes narrow. And why wasn't I made aware that my agency nominated both Shoto and Midoriya? Unfazed by his aggressive aura, Kame says smoothly. He's not the agency's intern, he's my intern. The doors start to close, but Endeavor holds them open with a large hand. I suggest you come in. Clenching his jaw, Endeavor shoots Izuku a sharp look before stepping into the elevator. The massive man takes up a significant amount of space, and Izuku leans away from him to avoid his flames. He brightens when Todoroki comes to stand between him and his father. Sorry I didn't say anything earlier, Izuku says. I wanted it to be a surprise. Thankfully, Todoroki doesn't look upset. We could have traveled here together, he says. Izuku shakes his head. Oh, no, I really did have to go to the Night Eye Agency first. I met up with Kame-san there. And how do you like it here so far? Todoroki asks, ignoring the holes his father's eyes are drilling into the back of his head. It's nice, Izuku replies honestly. Kame-san is teaching me a lot. What about you? He's interrupted by a loud alarm. They all look at Endeavor as he takes out his phone, his screen lighting up. His flames seem to grow larger. There's an incident in Hosu, he declares, more to Todoroki than anyone else. We're being called out. He jabs the elevator's buttons, somehow overriding the previous order to stop at the medical floor. And they start going down to one of the lower floors. Come, Shoto. Endeavor steps out of the elevator and starts barking orders to the nearest person he sees. Todoroki casts Izuku a parting glance before following his father. To the greenette's surprise, Kame ushers him out of the elevator too. We're going with them, kid, she says. Huh? He asks. But I thought... Remember what I told you yesterday? She asks, glancing at him. Izuku blinks, recalling. Usually we stay here while the heroes are on patrol, and then go if they need us. But if they ever get called out for a particular incident, then we go with them. Of course, we stay away from the fighting, but once the threat's down, we move in. Right. That was before she told him about healing villains. There's a special ambulance we travel in, Kame says, gently pulling him along. I'll have someone bring down your costume. The next few minutes go by very quickly. Endeavor and Todoroki leave almost immediately after the alert is sent out, multiple sidekicks rushing after them. Izuku hastily changes into his costume while Kame gets into the front with a sidekick. He nearly loses his balance when the ambulance starts driving and grabs onto one of the overhead railings to steady himself. Normally, driving to Hosu might take a decent amount of time, but with the sirens of the ambulance blaring, they're able to speed through streets without having to worry about getting stuck in traffic. As they get closer and closer to their destination, Izuku feels himself becoming rather nervous. They're going into a real fight right now. We're entering Hosu, the sidekick calls out, over the loud alarm. Kame looks over the back of her seat to check on Izuku. Things are going to move pretty fast, but I need you to stick by my side. Okay, he yelps when the ambulance flies over a rough bump. We're going to be staying far enough away to be safe, but close enough to assist, Kame tells him. But this is an active situation and things can change at any moment, so you listen to what the heroes tell you, all right? Okay. The ambulance takes a sharp left, causing the whole vehicle to wobble dangerously, and Izuku struggles to stay in his seat. As soon as he rights himself, the sidekick gasps right before something crashes into the front of the ambulance. For a long moment, all he can hear is the sound of tearing, crushing metal. He's thrown out of his seat as the ambulance stops abruptly and just barely manages to catch himself before he hits the opposite wall. The chaos stops as quickly as it started. Disoriented, Izuku looks up and realizes that the ambulance must have crashed. The siren has gone silent and the lights are off, leaving Izuku in pitch-black darkness. He slowly gets to his feet, his legs trembling. He didn't get injured, but panic and fear is starting to flood his veins. Kame-san, he calls out. Hearing no response, he carefully makes his way to the back of the ambulance and forces the doors open. As soon as he rounds the corner, he gasps in shock. A massive beast with pale, leathery wings stares at him with wild, unfocused eyes. Izuku feels like his heart stops. It's another Nomu. It has to be, with its brain sticking out like that. The Nomu opens its jaws and lets out an ear-piercing shriek, startling Izuku out of his stupor. A second later, 2 flaming whips wrap around the beast's neck and yank it backwards. Kid! The sidekick that drove them yells as she jumps out of the ambulance. Get out of here! She ducks as the Nomu swipes at her and lashes at it with one of her whips. The Nomu shrieks again, and it's loud enough to spur Izuku into action. Kame-san! He dashes around to the other side of the ambulance, briefly taking in the crushed hood, and yanks open the passenger door. Kame-san, we have to... The woman is unconscious, head lolled to the side as blood dribbles down the side of her temple. Swallowing down a cry, Izuku immediately unbuckles her seatbelt and tries to drag her out, but her legs are trapped under the broken dashboard. Kid! The sidekick yells again. I said get out of here! But Kame-san! I'll take care of her! Ah! She cries out as the Nomu swipes at her. The sidekick is clearly overwhelmed by her opponent, but she must have called for backup because Izuku can see other heroes running over to them, Endeavor included. The Nomu knocks the sidekick aside and lunges for Izuku, who instinctively freezes in fear despite his brain screaming at him to dodge. Flames lick his hair as a large ball of fire flies past his head, narrowly missing him. It strikes the Nomu instead, forcing it to stumble backwards with an ear-piercing shriek. A moment later, Endeavor barges past him and starts pummeling the Nomu. "Get him out of here!" he barks at one of his sidekicks, not sparing Izuku a single glance. A hand grabs him by the upper arm and starts pulling him away. "Come on, kid," another man says. Izuku struggles not to stumble as he hurries after him, cursing himself for freezing like that. He hasn't felt fear like this since USJ, except this time he doesn't have his friends with him. The sidekick glances over his shoulder and hisses under his breath. Izuku looks too and sees that the Nomu has escaped Endeavor's grasp and is in the air, dodging the fireball the flame hero throws at it. The sidekick glances back at Izuku, briefly looking torn, then straightens up and orders, "Go hide somewhere safe. I'll find you later." He pushes Izuku towards a nearby alleyway. Not needing to be told twice, Izuku hastily scrambles away. He darts into the alley and keeps running. He didn't notice it earlier, but he can hear the sounds of crashing and screaming coming from all around him. Dark clouds of smoke hang above the buildings and civilians flash by the mouth of the alleyway, fleeing from some unseen threat. Not wanting to find out what it is, Izuku ducks down another alley and keeps running. He doesn't know how long he runs for or how far he goes. All he can focus on is trying not to pass out as he dashes from alley to alley, never stepping onto the streets and gasping for breath the entire time. After what feels like hours, although it's probably only 10 minutes, he slows down. Legs shaking with fear and adrenaline, he leans against the nearest wall and listens. Things are quieter around here. He must be far from the fray. He feels his phone buzz in his pocket. Messages from Todoroki. "Sidekick said you ran off. Where are you? I can't find you. Couple sidekicks are hurt. Please respond." Izuku immediately feels guilt claw at his throat. He was so panicked, he completely forgot that he has an actual job here to do. Whatever is going on, it must be big. He doesn't know if that was the only Nomu that's causing trouble, but either way, one is enough to cause a lot of injuries. He needs to get his act together and help people, especially since Kame is unconscious. He feels a brief flash of worry for his mentor as he struggles to type out his response, trembling with fear and adrenaline. His fingers are too shaky to type, so eventually he just sends his location to Todoroki before pocketing his phone again. "God, where the hell am I?" he whispers to himself, glancing around. In his fright, he hadn't been paying attention to where he was running. All he could think about was getting as far away from that Nomu as possible. As soon as he starts walking over to the street, a scream stops him in his tracks. Startled, he whips his head around. This part of the city is fairly quiet, so he could hear the scream loud and clear. It sounded like it came from deeper within the alleys. Heart speeding up again, Izuku turns away from the street and starts jogging towards the cry. He doesn't hear any other sounds of fighting, so maybe somebody's injured? If it's just that, then he can help. He has to be careful that he's not walking himself into another fight, though. The greenette hesitantly peeks around the corner of a building, seeing nothing but another empty alleyway. He frowns, wondering if his mind was playing tricks on him with that scream, but he hears someone snarl. "I'll kill you!" That voice. He knows that voice, but he's never heard it sound like that before. Heart jumping to his throat, Izuku rushes down the alleyway, which opens up into an empty parking lot. He dashes across it, diving into an alleyway and racing to the end of that one. Having no idea where he's going, Izuku rounds the corner and abruptly skids to a halt, gasping at the scene in front of him. Two bloodied figures lay slumped against the floor. One he recognizes as the pro-hero native, and the other he recognizes as Ida. A third man stands over his friend, the jagged sword in his hand, poised to strike. Izuku's eyes widen, and time seems to slow down. In the back of his mind, he must have known Ida's reason for choosing to do his internship in Hosu, the city where his brother was attacked. He just never thought someone as rational and logical as Ida would go looking for. Todoroki's voice echoes in his head. Anger can make you do stupid things. So that must mean that this man standing before him is... The hero killer Stain glances up at Izuku's shocked gasp and looks over at the freckled boy. Izuku's breath catches in his throat, feeling frozen with fear as blood-red eyes land on him. Another child, the hero killer growls, gaze roaming over him. His eyes land on the medical symbol on his chest and he makes a noise in his throat. A healer. He seems to relax ever so slightly. Midoriya-kun, Ida croaks, struggling to move his head. What are you? Get out of here, run! Listen to your friend, boy. Stain agrees. It's my duty to kill fake heroes, but you don't need to die as well. I have no quarrel with healers. Izuku's eyes flit between the villain and his friend frantically, his mind whirling as he wonders what to do. He can't fight Stain. Even if he did have a combative quirk, he wouldn't stand a chance against the hero killer. But he can't just run away either. He's not a hero, he manages to squeak. He's just a student. Stain's cold gaze is unforgiving. Even so, I can already tell that he will grow up to become just another fake hero poisoning this society. After all, he didn't come here to save this other fake. He jerks his head at Native, slumped against the wall. He just came to fulfill his own vengeful desire. Ida lets out a choked noise and rasps. Midoriya-kun, please. Please leave. Don't get involved. This has nothing to do with you. He looks angry, eyes wet with unshed tears as he hisses at the ground. Izuku's heart breaks to see his friend like this. Torn, he glances between Ida and Stain before shakily moving into a fighting stance, raising his fists in front of him. Even if he can't fight this man, maybe he can distract him long enough for help to arrive. He knows Todoroki is looking for him. Maybe he'll... At the sight of his fighting stance, the hero killer lets out a bark of laughter. Are you that desperate to save your friend? Don't waste your blood on phonies like him, boy. Healers are far too rare to squander their life on such trivial matters. Surely you must know that. Stop it! Ida snaps. Run away, I told you, this has nothing to do with you. Frustrated, Izuku snaps back. If you say that, then heroes can't do anything. Recalling All Might's words, he says, meddling when you don't need to is the essence of being a hero. You're not a hero, Ida snarls, and Izuku flinches. God damn it, run away! You're going to get yourself killed! His cries are drowned out by the hero killer's laugh. He grins wildly at Izuku, and the greenette gulps. Oh, you are a little hero, aren't you? A better one than these fakes by far. He sneers down at Ida briefly before looking back at Izuku. It's a pity you weren't born with a more suitable quirk. This corrupt society would be better if all heroes had hearts like yours. It's such a threatening way to compliment someone that it just leaves Izuku feeling confused. He's even more confused when Stain tilts his head and rumbles. You're Midoriya Izuku, aren't you? How do you know my name? Izuku asks. It seems a villain named Shigaraki has his eyes on you. Izuku tenses up. He showed me a picture of you from the sports festival. Said you were a particularly troublesome little hero. He sniffs. I can see why now. However, I still have a duty to uphold. He turns his attention back to Ida, lifting his sword once again, and Izuku's heart skips a beat. Wait! Stain pauses, and Izuku frantically tries to think of what to say. Why are you... You're obviously trying to buy yourself time, Stain interrupts, sounding a bit more impatient now. But there's no point in delaying the inevitable. So unless you really do intend to fight me yourself, I suggest you run along. Midoriya-kun. Ida's watery, fearful eyes meet his own as he croaks. Go! The edge of Stain's sword dips dangerously close to his face. In a split second, Izuku's mind is made for him. He moves without thinking. Hearing his footsteps slapping against the gravel, Stain whirls around, looking surprised that Izuku is actually approaching him. As soon as his back is turned, Izuku sees Todoroki appear at the other end of the alley. Their gazes lock, and Izuku ducks to avoid the stream of fire Todoroki sends at Stain's back. The hero killer barely manages to dodge. And a moment later, Todoroki uses his ice to slide Izuku, Native, and Ida over to him. Todoroki-kun! Ida exclaims. Midoriya, you need to give more details in a time like this, Todoroki says, not taking his eyes off of Stain as he pockets his phone. You made me late. Izuku is so relieved, he feels like he could cry. Thank you. See to Ida-kun's wounds, Todoroki orders, and call for more pros. Right. Izuku crawls over to Ida, struggling not to slip on Todoroki's ice as he reaches his friend's side. Midoriya-kun, Ida starts to say. Shut up. Izuku takes off his gloves and presses his hands to the wound on the other boy's shoulder. I'm not running away. To his confusion, even when he heals his wounds, Ida still can't move. I don't understand. What's wrong? Are you... It's his quirk. Ida struggles. Todoroki-kun, don't let him... Izuku looks up just in time to see Stain throw a knife at Todoroki's face, grazing his cheek. Todoroki curses and suddenly Stain is right in front of them, dagger in hand. You have good friends in Genium, he sneers, swinging his knife only for Todoroki to block his attack with a wall of ice. He grabs Todoroki's shirt with his other hand and tugs him forward, long tongue darting towards his cheek, but is forced to jump away when Todoroki ignites his left side. That was close, the bi-colored boy says. It's blood, isn't it? His quirk activates by ingesting blood. He sends another wave of ice at Stain, but the villain dodges and slices through it with his sword, sending smaller chunks everywhere. Meanwhile, Izuku struggles to tug Ida's upper body into his arms. He doesn't want to leave Todoroki alone, especially with Native still unconscious. But maybe if he could get the two of them out of here, Todoroki will be able to fight easier. Come on, Ida-kun. Izuku grunts, glancing at the entrance of the alley nearby and wondering how to carry his much larger friend. Let's... Why? Ida's whisper distracts him. Why are you two? Please stop. I've inherited my brother's name. I have to do it. That guy's mine. Izuku feels a flare of frustrated anger, but Todoroki saves him from retorting by saying, You inherited it. That's strange. His voice is calm, even as he sends another wave of ice at Stain. The Ingenium I saw before didn't have that face, though. You've got a lot going on behind the scenes in your family, too, huh? Izuku stares at him, then tenses up when Stain breaks through the wall of ice. To block your own view against an opponent that's faster than you, he growls. What a foolish plan. Todoroki ignites his left side, only to cry out in pain when two throwing knives plunge into his forearm. Todoroki-kun! Izuku exclaims. Distracted by his pain, Todoroki doesn't look up in time to see Stain leaping towards him with his sword. But Izuku does. He drops Ida in favor of lunging at Todoroki, wrapping his arms around his middle and knocking him aside. Unfortunately, instead of slicing Todoroki's shoulder, Stain's sword ends up coming down on Izuku's leg. He screams and kicks out, knocking the sword out of Stain's hands before he collapses on the ground next to Todoroki. Midoriya! Todoroki turns to him in concern as he sits up, then hastily sends a stream of fire at Stain when the villain turns to Ida once more, a new sword in hand. He gets to his feet and continues forcing Stain back as Izuku leans himself against the wall, examining his injury. The cut in his calf is deep and painful, but all he can think right now is that he can no longer heal anyone. Todoroki still has the throwing knives in his arm, and Ida is still paralyzed for whatever reason, and Native is bleeding heavily. The horrible feeling of helplessness rises in his throat again, but the light of Todoroki's flames burns his retinas as he watches his friend fight for their lives, and he finds himself forcing the feeling right back down. No, he will not let himself become useless once more. Not this time. Not when his friends could die at any moment. There has to be something he can do, something. His eyes land on the chunks of ice scattered around the alley floor, and a light bulb goes off in his mind. Stain starting to force Todoroki towards the opening of the alley, getting dangerously close to Ida and Native, who Todoroki just barely manages to protect with his long-distance attacks. He can't keep this up forever, though. He's bleeding and tired and clearly outmatched. Stain forces him to dodge yet another blade thrown at him, and while the boy is distracted, he turns towards Ida, raising his sword to deliver a killing blow and... Slam! The hero killer stumbles when a chunk of ice collides with the back of his head. Stunned, he glances over his shoulder at Izuku, but he doesn't have any time to say anything before Todoroki sends a stream of fire at him. He dodges, but at the same time Izuku throws another chunk of ice at him, this time hitting him in the back. His head whips around. You little... Flames fly towards him, and he jumps out of the way. They manage to fend him off this way for a few minutes, keeping Stain between them as Todoroki attacks from the front and Izuku from the back. Izuku doesn't have incredible aim, but he can at least force Stain to dodge, which keeps him from turning on Ida and Native, who are still too close to him. Meanwhile, Ida is pleading for them to stop. "Please," he whispers. "Please stop. I'm already..." Gritting his teeth, Todoroki yells, "If you want us to stop, then stand up. Look properly at what you want to be." Stain breaks through one of his ice walls again, forcing Todoroki backwards once more, but at this point, he seems to realize that he's getting nowhere, being stuck in between Todoroki and Izuku. In a swift movement, he throws a knife at Todoroki with one hand, and with the other, he uses the flat of his sword to parry the chunk of ice Izuku aims at the back of his head, sending it flying back to the boy. Izuku, who is in the midst of reaching for more ice to throw, only has time to look up in surprise before the chunk hits him in the face. Ah! Pain explodes in his temple, and his vision blurs briefly. He barely sees Stain backflip towards him, but he does hear the man's heavy boots land behind him, and he most certainly feels himself being grabbed and yanked upwards. A long, slimy, disgusting tongue licks his temple, and the next moment, he goes limp. "Midoriya!" Todoroki raises his left hand, but freezes when a dagger is pressed against Izuku's stomach. "Enough!" Stain snarls next to Izuku's ear. No matter how hard the boy tries, he can't make his body move. Todoroki was right. Stain's quirk does activate through ingesting blood. He feels paralyzed, but even so, Stain still holds him in a vice grip, a muscled arm wrapped around his torso, pinning his arms to his sides, while the knife presses against his stomach. "Don't do anything foolish, boy," Stain warns Todoroki, who glares. "I don't approve of killing innocent people, but I won't hesitate to end this boy's life if you force my hand." Todoroki snarls wordlessly, but when Stain presses the blade a bit deeper, making Izuku whimper, he reluctantly lets his flames go out. A tense silence fills the alley. Despite his steady tone, Izuku can feel Stain's muscles trembling with exhaustion. His heart thuds rapidly against Izuku's back. Taking Izuku hostage might have actually been a move made out of desperation. Growling, Stain spits. "Now look at what you've made me do. Harming a healer is a low move, even for villains. See, they don't save people for the glory of it, but you'll never be anything more than a fake who prioritizes his own selfish desires. Just like your father." Todoroki bares his teeth, and the grip on Izuku tightens. You are a cancer to a society that warps the idea of heroes. Someone must set you straight. You're an archaic fundamentalist, Todoroki says. Then, for the briefest second, his eyes flicker to the side, before focusing on Stain again. I can't listen to the logic of a murderer. Of course you won't, Stain hisses. That's exactly why I will. He's interrupted by a loud cry of, Recipro burst! Stain's head suddenly jolts forward, his chin grazing Izuku's curls. His chest hits Izuku's back, causing both of them to pitch forward and fall to the ground. Izuku hits the ground first and is squashed by Stain's body a moment later. But all he can focus on is the pain that suddenly explodes on his flank. Midoriya-kun! Ida shouts, and Stain's weight disappears off him. But Izuku still can't move thanks to the villain's quirk. He hears Todoroki's flames roar above him, and he struggles to turn his head, peering out of one eye and seeing Todoroki and Ida both relentlessly attacking Stain, whose movements are significantly more sluggish. Ida must have gotten up behind them while Stain was holding Izuku hostage and sent that Recipro burst to the back of his head. The villain is clearly dazed, but that makes his fighting all the more desperate. Izuku can see he's making more mistakes now. After a few minutes of dodging and throwing knives, Stain stumbles long enough for Todoroki's ice to freeze one of his legs. The fight ends not long after that, with Ida taking Stain down with a flurry of Recipro burst-powered kicks. When the hero killer finally collapses, they all just stare at his crumpled form for a few moments. He's probably knocked out, right? Ida pants. Let's restrain him and get him out onto the street, Todoroki says, glancing around for something to bind him with. Meanwhile, Izuku struggles not to whimper in pain, his left flank feeling like it's on fire. Blood steadily pools beneath him and he croaks. Guys? They both turn around, their eyes simultaneously widening at the sight of blood. Midoriya-kun! Ida drops to his knees beside him and carefully turns him over. Now, Izuku groans in pain. A knife slides into the pool of blood on the ground and Ida gasps in shock. His stomach! Stain had a knife pressed against him, Todoroki says, kneeling on Izuku's other side so he can keep an eye on the unconscious villain. You couldn't see it because he had his back turned to you. Ida's eyes fill with guilt. Midoriya-kun, Kids. A voice grunts, and after a few moments of shuffling, Native's face enters Izuku's field of vision. His eyes land on the injury, and he hisses. Crap. It's all right. Izuku grimaces, but is surprised when his arm twitches when he tries to move it. Huh? I can move again. I don't understand. Native frowns. I was down for so long. Izuku shakes his head. Doesn't matter right now. Help me sit up. I need to look at my wound. Todoroki helps him lean up against Ida, who holds him steady as he presses down on his flank. The pain is unbearable, especially now that the adrenaline has worn off, but he can tell that it's not too bad. It's just a graze, he grunts. His arm got jostled, I think, when Ida-kun kicked him, so he didn't stab me. I just got grazed when I fell on the knife. He carefully feels around with his fingers, trying to gauge how deep the gash right under his left rib cage is. It's fairly deep, considering that he had Stain's weight pressing down on him when he fell on the knife, so he does his best to put pressure on it. Blood still leaks through his fingers. Can someone get the gauze out of my bag? He asks weakly. Help me wrap my leg and... Oh, Todoroki-kun! He recalls the knives in the boy's forearm and frowns when he sees them missing. You shouldn't have taken them out. You're going to bleed more. Todoroki looks like he doesn't know whether to feel fond or frustrated. Midoriya, please. Worry about yourself for once. I can help patch you up, Native says, reaching for the bags on Izuku's belt. All heroes get some basic medical training. Todoroki nods. I'll restrain Stain then. He gets up to look for something to tie him up with. "Be sure to remove his weapons, too," Native calls out, unraveling the gauze and giving some to Izuku to press against his stomach. As he starts wrapping up Izuku's leg, the freckled boy stifles a groan and leans his head back against Ida's chest. He's never been more exhausted in his life. After a few minutes of silence, Native asks, "So, you're really a healer, then?" "Mm-hmm." Izuku blinks tiredly. "Yeah, well, in training." Native smiles softly. "You're really brave. Then, keep the pressure on." Izuku's hand had gone a bit slack from his exhaustion. A larger, stronger hand slides over his, pressing more firmly against the wound. "Ida-kun?" The blue-haired boy has been uncharacteristically quiet for the past few minutes, but now Izuku can hear his hitching breath behind him. "I'm sorry," he whispers. To have my friends, to have a healer bleed for me." Izuku presses his lips together. Now that the panic has died down a bit, he actually finds himself rather mad at Ida for actively seeking out the hero killer. It was an incredibly stupid and dangerous thing for him to do. If Izuku had found him only a moment later, he would have been dead, and just that thought makes Izuku feel dizzy. So for now, all he says is, "Later, Ida-kun. Later." Ida falls silent. Native glances between them and says, "Hey, if you're not injured, why don't you carry your friend while I take care of the villain?" "Of course," Ida says, carefully scooping up Izuku into his arms. Native and Todoroki make quick work of restraining Stain, who has yet to regain consciousness, and together, they all make their way out of the alley. Soon after they step out onto the street, a group of sidekicks approach them. "Children?" one asks, bewildered. "Those injuries look serious," another exclaims. "Somebody call for a healer." "This is a healer," Todoroki says, nodding at Izuku. "And he's too injured to heal anymore." The heroes look even more shocked. Izuku winces. "I'm an apprentice, but my mentor got injured during the initial attack." "Shit, this is bad," one woman hisses, then her eyes widen when she spots Stain. Is that the hero killer?" "What?" "Call the police and an ambulance." As they wait for said ambulance, most of the heroes stand guard around Stain while the rest fuss over the trio. They ask about their injuries, Izuku's, of course, being the worst out of the three. Ida only has a few minor scrapes and bruises from the end of the fight, all of his initial wounds having been healed by Izuku earlier. Even as more time passes, his arms never waver as they carry Izuku. The greenette, however, can see the turmoil swirling in his eyes. "You too," he says, glancing between Todoroki and Izuku. He bows his head. "You were injured because of me. I am so sorry. I couldn't see anything through my anger." Even though his head is bowed, Izuku can see the tears in his eyes clearly. His heart aches. "I'm sorry too," he says. "Even though I knew you were in pain, I couldn't do anything to help you." Lifting his hand from his side, he presses it against Ida's chest and says, "I'll heal your brother as soon as I can. I promise. I won't let Stain take your hero away from you." Ida's breath hitches, and he squeezes his eyes shut. The tears finally fall. Todoroki shifts awkwardly and says, "Pull yourself together. You're crying all over Midoriya." "I'm sorry." Ida sniffles, rubbing his face against his shoulder to wipe away his tears. Izuku smiles, feeling just a bit lighter, and snuggles deeper against Ida's chest. It's surprisingly comfortable, even with the armor. Of course, his comfort is short-lived. A cry of alarm is the only warning he gets before he is suddenly being snatched out of Ida's arms, a massive wing knocking the boy aside. He shrieks as claws dig into the gash on his flank, nearly passing out from the pain as he's carried higher and higher into the sky. "Midoriya!" He can barely hear Todoroki scream with the wind whipping past his ears. It takes a few moments for Izuku to realize that he's being carried by the same Nomu that attacked his ambulance, but by the time he does, the beast suddenly shudders and starts falling. An arm wraps around Izuku's torso, holding him steady and preventing him from getting injured as the Nomu hits the ground. A familiar knife delivers a killing blow to the Nomu's exposed brain. "This is all," Stain rasps, "to create a more just society." Izuku panics, but Stain keeps him pinned with a large hand on his back. "Let me go!" He grunts in pain as his wounds are aggravated. Stain pays him no mind, breath rattling in his chest as he glances over his shoulder. "Endeavor," he hisses. Izuku struggles to turn his head and sees that the flame hero has joined the group of heroes. Still, Stain doesn't back down. Instead, he lets go of Izuku and turns to face Endeavor. "You fake," he growls. The utter hatred in his voice is enough to make everyone pause. Even though Stain's hand is no longer pressing him down, Izuku still feels pinned. "I must make things right. Someone must be dyed in blood. I must take back what it means to be a hero." Taking a heavy step forward, he snarls. "Come, try and get me, you fakes. The only one I'll let kill me is the true hero. All Might." For a few good moments, everyone is paralyzed by the weight of his conviction. But as soon as it started, it's over. Stain falls unconscious. All anyone can do is stare. Todoroki is the first to break out of his stupor. "Midoriya." He starts to rush over, but Native stops him, telling him to wait until the heroes wrangle Stain. Endeavor does so, along with a couple of sidekicks, but he seems displeased. When he approaches, he glances at Izuku with some emotion that almost looks like concern, although it's more likely he's just taking note of his injuries before he turns his attention to the hero killer. A sidekick helps Izuku limp his way over to the ambulance that arrives moments later, and with that, he, Todoroki, Ida, and Native are carted off to the nearest hospital. What was already a long night turns even longer. Izuku ends up needing a minor blood transfusion in addition to his stitches due to the amount of blood he's lost by the time he reaches the hospital. Inko, of course, gets notified about his injuries, which results in him spending a significant amount of time trying to calm her down while he gets the transfusion. She wants to drive over immediately, but he manages to convince her not to, so long as he promises to call her multiple times throughout his hospital stay. All Might texts him too, asking if he's okay. Izuku isn't sure how the man found out about all this, but Recovery Girl calls him only 2 minutes later, so he assumes she told him. Needless to say, by the time he, Todoroki, and Ida are finally left alone in their room to sleep, he's more than ready to pass out. He falls asleep as soon as his head hits the pillow. All right, listeners, this concludes the second half to Chapter 19 of The Roundabout Way of Fate. Chapter 20 will be up next. Personally, I love this chapter that we just read and listened to because I am a huge fan of Hosu. I love when Hosu shows up. I love when Ida is dumb and goes after Stain. And I love when Izuku and Todoroki have to rescue him. I loved it in the initial canon material itself, but I really like when fanfic authors can take it in a different direction. I adore when Stain finds ways to call out Izuku's heroic potential, the fact that he has the qualities of what he ascribes to be a true hero. That despite Stain recognizing that Izuku is a healer in this, he still retains those qualities and states that Izuku would be the best among them, right? With the qualities that he exhibits, the fact that he goes in there and manages to stand up to Stain on behalf of a friend, knowing that he's a healer. I think that really kind of makes it all the more powerful. So I really enjoyed this one. I love how the author put this together. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your reactions to everything, though, so please drop your comments below for me. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.